Welcome to Voodoo Whiskey Gaming, and this is my late review of Ghost Recon Wildlands. I played it on the Xbox One. It's also available on the PS4 and PC. Ghost Recon Wildlands is the latest in the Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon series, and you're an elite special ops group who goes to Bolivia because basically a cartel took over the entirety of Bolivia, which the US government didn't really care about up until the part where they found out that there was a DEA snitch in their organization and he was hiding out in a US embassy that they bombed to get at him. So that bumped them up from cartel to terrorists, and well, the US government goes after them hard. One thing interesting about the way things are relayed in this game is that some of them are actually told by El Sueño, the leader of the cartel. The rest of it generally happens in mission briefings and whatnot. Honestly, I found the story to be pretty weak. I mean, it's a general concept, and they have a lot of detail in the characters, especially the ones you're hunting. So that's kind of interesting, but overall, I think the story's pretty weak. As for the audio, I think it was pretty good. It works out well. The voiceover is pretty good. It's not like the best, and it doesn't have to be the best because, well, there's not a ton of drama in this game. It's not super story rich, so the voiceover work isn't as important as it could be in other games. I will say, I feel like El Sueño could be voiced a little better since you hear a lot from him, and his generally has like the most emotional context in my opinion. One thing I really enjoyed writing-wise, and it applies to the voiceover work, is just the chatter between the operators themselves. They all have some interesting stuff to say in the varying situations. As for the weapons and just ambient sound effects, they all sound very good, actually really good, so I don't have any complaints there with that. One thing I have to shit on is the radio, however, because it's pretty obnoxious. There's one station, so if you're not into that music, you're not going to enjoy it, and honestly, the DJ himself is pretty obnoxious, and it does this weird thing where it loops. Now, I don't mean it loops in that there's a limited content, and it loops over and over, and you hear the same shit over and over, which is true, you do hear that. What I mean is, you will hear one of the advertisements, and then you will hear it again immediately after. Now, the title is Ghost Recon Wildlands, but that having been said, in gameplay and whatnot, this is not a Ghost Recon game. My first complaint is that it's a co-op game. This is meant to be played with your friends, because if you try and play solo, well, you'll find that the AI sucks. But not only that, you don't have the same control as you do in other Ghost Recon games. You cannot control your squad on the same level. It is a far less tactical feeling game than the previous Ghost Recon games. It's much more of an open world, third-person action game than it is like a tactical shooter like the Ghost Recon franchise is known to be. There's also plenty of RPG elements in it. Yes, I know, that's a shock, because no game includes those anymore. But what I mean is you can upgrade skills for your drone, your shooting, your squad, the rebels, etc., etc. There is a good weapon selection, but it kind of sucks the way you have to go about getting them. You can either buy ghost points to be a lazy bitch and unlock them, which I'll admit I was a lazy bitch and unlocked a bunch of sniper rifles using the points that I received for buying the game. Or you can explore the map and get them. I like that none of the weapons are really locked in the store, or at least none that I noticed. You can find and get all the weapons and attachments. Now, as I stated, it's open world. It is a very big world, which is pretty cool, but it gets kind of old. It does what a lot of other Ubisoft games do, where you have to complete a bunch of smaller missions to get main missions to unlock and like take over an area, essentially. Now, when it comes to the controls, when your boots on the ground, the controls are very good. The shooting works very well. I like how realistic it is to some extent because there definitely is bullet drop when you're sniping. And I did notice that at range, my assault rifles became less accurate. So I like that. And I like the controls for when you're moving around, mostly. I didn't like that the grenade was mapped to the left bumper rather than the right bumper. I'm just more used to that. So there were definitely a few times where I hucked a grenade when I meant to give commands. But that having been said, this is an open world. It's a very big world, and you need to get around. And that's where the controls kind of fall apart, because, like, the vehicles you drive, like, on the road with wheels, those all suck. Like, the turning is crap. Like, you'll be barely, like, tweaking the stick to move, and next thing you know, your car's just like, fuck, gone. And it's like, no, not good. But then you have things like the air vehicles, the planes and the helicopters. And, well, I got into a plane and I was like, oh man, this thing sucks. I did put a little bit more time behind it, and I found that it was actually better than I was expecting after my first flight. Once I got the hang of it, it was alright, but it was not an intuitive control setup. The planes don't have any fucking rudders. They just have the flaps, which means minor adjustments in the air are basically impossible. Like, you have to be a little more extreme with your maneuvering because, well, minor adjustments are very difficult without the rudders. Which is stupid because the plane has rudders and they work when you're on the ground. While I didn't really enjoy the plane, I will say it's far better than the helicopter. The helicopter is awful, but the problem is you find more helicopters than you do planes, and traveling by air is the best way to get around. So that leaves you with things like the plane and helicopter, and the helicopter is just awful. It is so unintuitive that it is painful to fly the first time. What I did was I found a helicopter and I just practiced with it for a while, and I became pretty good with it, but not incredibly good. There was literally a time where I was trying to land it and I thought I was good, so I jumped out, and next thing I know, the fucking thing landed on top of me. That's how poorly it controls. But not just that, you have to like hold down one of the triggers and push forward so that you can start going forward, but then there becomes a point where the helicopter starts heading towards the ground if you continue to do that. So you have to let go of the stick and hold the trigger down. It's just not an intuitive system. Lastly, there's the graphics. It's a pretty good looking game, but Ubisoft has had way better looking games, so it's not the best it could be, and there are some weird graphical issues. I definitely ran into a lot of graphics tearing, where it looked like part of the guy's head was here and the other part was over here. Shit like that happened all the time, and then you have this weird thing where you're moving through the world and there's like waves of like lighter colors moving through. Like, the tree is like dark green and then suddenly becomes a lighter green and it like moves through it like a wave. It's fucking weird and distracting. Now, I always say that graphics aren't the most important thing, and I truly don't believe that they are. But when there are things like that happening as often as they are happening in Ghost Recon Wildlands, it gets really distracting. So to wrap this up, while I was enjoying it for the most part, I didn't like a lot of things about this game. I will say, if you've got a few friends and you're going to get together and play this, then it works. Like, if you have some committed buddies who will play this game with you, then yeah, it's actually a pretty fun game. But if you're looking for something solo, well, this is really not the best game. It's much harder to overlook some of these problems when you're playing it by yourself. So if you're a solo player, honestly, free to skip it, maybe rent it. If you've got some co-op buddies who are like committed to it, then yeah, go for it. It'll be fun. Okay, so in the comments below, why don't you tell me if you're a fan of the new direction that like the Tom Clancy games have been moving. And as always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm doing in general, share, subscribe. Have a good one.